Shalom Aleichem. We continue in Mishneh Torah Rambam, Zichron Livracha. Hilchot Talmud Torah, Perek Gimel, Chapter 3, Halacha Daled Vahei. We'll share the screen with you. Tehillah Dino Shel Adam. The first point, first area of a person's behavior, a person's conduct, of how a person leads his life, is this question of Talmud Torah. Tehillah Dino Shel Adam Eno Nidon Ela Al Talmud. Talmud meaning study. The word Talmud literally means, in modern Hebrew, the translation would be lemidah, studying. V'halkach al sha'ar ma'asel, and only having taken that into account, when a person is judged b'vet din shel ma'ala, by the heavenly court, this is the first thing that is taken into account. Therefore, Rambam says, "Le'olam ya'asok adam b'Torah, afilu shelo rishma." So here Rambam adds the statement that appears in the Talmud. It is therefore better and correct that a person studied Torah even shelo rishma, even for the wrong reasons. Rambam explains in Hilchot Teshuvah Perek Yud that this refers to some extraneous aim or benefit that a person will assumes that he will receive because of his study of Torah, whether it is he assumes he's studying Torah because of the sachar that he will be given by HASHEM for studying Torah, or because of social standing or a job opportunity, or what have you. Anything which is any aim, any purpose, any motivation, which is not based simply on studying the Torah for its own sake, because it is the central way of connecting to HASHEM, and because it is true, and because it is what we are required to do. Anything beyond that is, or other than that, is limud Torah shelo rishma. But it is better to study Torah afilu shelo rishma, shamitoch shelo nishma, bar rishma. A person, usually, there can be exceptions to most rules, but usually it is the case, even if a person studies Torah at the outset for the wrong reasons, he will eventually be drawn and moved by the Torah in such a way, drawn to the Torah and moved by the Torah and uplifted by the Torah in such a way that he will be studying in the end Lishma for the right reasons.
Rabbi?
Yes.
You're not supposed to teach Torah to somebody that's a holech b'derech lo tova.
Yes.
Because they're going to make the Torah into something which it's not and degrade it. So how do you draw the line between limud shelo lishma to what those people do?
These are two separate things. It's a good and very legitimate question, but these are two separate things. One, misha holech b'derech lo tova, refers to a person whose behavior is improper. studying Torah with ulterior motives is not holech b'derech lo tova. Is not a person whose lifestyle, whose behavior, whose actions are reprehensible. It's not the ideal. It's a lower level of motivation when it comes to the study of Torah, without doubt. But it is not holech b'derech lo tova. Holech b'derech lo tova would be someone that is known to be dishonest in his business dealings, in his interactions with other people, when it comes to monetary matters, or it would be someone who is known to be, let's say, promiscuous or something like that. So that he is very likely keeping Shabbat and many other aspects of the Torah, but in one or two areas of the Torah, he is remiss. He is being hoteh. He is sinning. So that person first has to be straightened out, and rather than teach such a person Torah, if you're aware of this situation. But a person who holech b'derech tova, he behaves properly and correctly as far as we are able to ascertain. But we also know that he hopes to attain a certain position. He's aiming. He's what really motivates him, perhaps, maybe more than anything, or together with other more positive motivations. He's also motivated by ulterior motives, by the hope of attaining fame or wealth or social standing or what have you. That is considered limud Torah shelo lishma. If we look for a moment in Hilchot Teshuvah and Perek Yod, so here in Hilchot Teshuvah Perek Yod, chapter 10, Halacha He or Gimel, Rambam writes as follows. Let's begin from here. V'chesav hi ha'ahava ha'reuya. V'chesav hi ha'ahava ha'reuya. How is a person Well, actually, I think perhaps we should even begin from the beginning of the chapter. Let us begin at the very beginning of the chapter. Perek Asiri Hilchot Teshuvah. Rambam says, Al Yomar Adam. A person should not say to themselves, a person should not think, Hareni Osem Miswot HaTorah. I shall live according to the Miswot of the Torah. Wa'osek b'chochmata, and I will study the wisdom of the Torah. Kedei she'akabel ha'berachot ha'ketuvot ba, or kedei she'ezkeh l'chayei ha'olam haba, in order to receive the reward for so doing in this world, or kedei she'ezkeh l'chayei ha'olam haba, also that in order that I shall be zocheh to a more significant portion, ba'olam haba, the world to come. Ve'efrosh min ha'averot she'hizhira Torah mehen, and I will not, precisely as we said before, not go b'derech lo tova. I will live according to the book entirely. I will go by the book. Efrosh min ha'averot she'hizhira Torah mehen. I will not commit those sins that the Torah instructs us to distance ourselves from. Kadesh and Nosel min hakelolot hakutuvot b'Torah, in order to avoid the various punishments that are mentioned in the Torah for a person who does the opposite. Also that I will not lose my portion. And these are the thoughts of many people. This is the motivation, the fundamental motivation of many people, of less understanding. And that's what Rambam says here. En ra'ui la'avod et Hashem. This is halakha bet here. En ra'ui la'avod et Hashem al derech zo. This is not the proper, the ideal manner and motivation and philosophy when it comes to avodat Hashem, to serving Hashem and living how to live one's life. She'oved al derech zo hu oved mi'yirah. A person who thinks along these lines, he is worshipping and serving Hashem and studying Torah mi'yirah. In other words, the hidush here is that you might say it's not because he's afeard of something, it's because he wants to gain something. The hidush is that's also considered oved mi'yirah. Oved mi'yirah is not just a person who says, well, I have no choice. I've heard of such people, not perhaps the upper echelons of the Jewish people, but I've heard such people who have done teshuvah, and because they say, well, I went to this seminar or some gathering where this rabbi stood up and said that if I don't keep Shabbat, I will burn in hell. And this rabbi went on to describe in great detail the trials and tribulations of such a person in hell and how hot it is and things of this nature. The kind of thing that appeals to a certain class of person. And I have heard such people say, what can you do? I had no choice. It was just too scary. So I decided to keep Shabbat. Well, keeping Shabbat is obviously what one must do. And Baruch Hashem, this person decided to keep Shabbat, and previously they were not keeping Shabbat. So this Rav had a positive impact, but that doesn't mean that this is how a Jew should. These are in those terms a Jew should think. So Rambam continues. So that's Oved Mi'yirah in the most obvious and classic sense. But there's also Oved Mi'yirah is also a lower level of motivation. In other words, excuse me, a person who worships for ulterior motives is also a kind of Oved Mi'yirah. In other words, doing so not for the purest of motivations, but there are other extraneous aims that a person has in mind. That's also a level which is referred to as Oved Mi'yirah. So Rambam says, "She'haved al derech zo, hu Oved Mi'yirah, wa'ena ma'alaf ha'nevi'im, wa'lo ma'alaf ha'chachamim." This is not the level of either the Nevi'im and their followers and their students, and not the level, not the motivation, not the worldview of the Hachamim and their students and their followers. So it's not the way of Talmidei Hachamim to think in such terms. We'en oved et Hashem al derech zo ela ameh haaretz. The kind of person who thinks in such terms is by definition an am haaretz. In other words, an am haaretz might be a person who is very pure of heart, but doesn't know very much, not very learned at all, doesn't study Torah, never had the opportunity or never had the inclination, and is lazy or what have you. And he doesn't have to think in very cynical terms, but that's one type of am haaretz. Another kind of am haaretz is someone who is simply scared. He's the various warnings of the Torah were drummed into him in such a way that it put the fear of HaShem into him, quite literally. I know a person who grew up in an entirely assimilated family, who told me once very plainly that at some point when he was in his early 20s, perhaps, he heard a shiur of a certain Rav on the internet. And this Rav simply said, people have to know, if you're Mahalel Shabbat, you're Hayav Mitah, in the most literal sense. And if there's no Bedin to carry it out right now, then Hashem will get you in some other way. And he said, and this person was Chozer B'Tshuva. And he said to me, no, I'd never heard anybody in my life say that if I don't keep Shabbat, I'm Hayav Mitah, that I should be put to death. Never heard such a thing. And this shook me up. And this is not a stupid or a stupid person, a simpleton, not at all. But sometimes people need to hear that that kind of a statement to shock them, to wake them up. So one cannot completely one cannot completely denigrate and ridicule such a teaching, a person who makes such statements to a wider audience. You never know exactly who's going to hear what you're saying and what the outcome will be, but as I'm telling you, sometimes the outcome is positive, not ideal, perhaps. The person's motivation may not be the ideal motivation, at least not at first, but that's what we're discussing here. Having now been shocked into some kind of awareness, this person may begin to keep Torah or some of the Torah and will begin to study Torah, which I happen to know this person does now. And then, I mean, astam mitoch shelo lishma b'lishma. That's what we're discussing, and his motivation, his outlook, his understanding will change, hopefully. But some people are not that way. They always work simply because of it's not kedai. It's not worthwhile to take the risk, shall we say? So it's a kind of insurance policy. So that's how some people relate to the Torah, or for ulterior motives, which is again oved mira of a lower level. In other words, less reprehensible, but nevertheless not the ideal. So Rambam says, "En ovedet Hashem al derech zo, ela amei haaretz v'hanoshim v'hachetanim." And this is also common amongst women and children, says Rambam, who usually were not very educated. Such people should be taught, says Rambam, to serve Hashem and to live according to the Torah. Mira. Not because this is ideal, but because with some people, this is a necessary first step along the path towards serving Hashem correctly and living with and acting based on a correct and healthy Torah outlook. So that's what I said before. We cannot completely, we cannot simply make light of such people who preach in such a fashion to the tzibur, to the public, and who give shirim on the internet that many people will see, and you never know exactly who and why. Someone will turn on and click onto that thing, and they'll hear this, and that may change their life. As I said, I've literally spoken to such people. But that's not ideal, but it's necessary sometimes. And it's a mistake, by the way, to think that should never be done. This is precisely the thing that this person said to me. that, I heard many other shiurim from all kinds of people, all kinds of rabbis that were on a much, much higher level, but they never shook me up until I heard this Rav say that I was Hayav Mitah, and that it's to be taken very seriously. And then everything else flowed from that and followed. But there is room for that. And an approach which is too highbrow, too intellectual, too spiritual, without putting the fear of the Lord, to quote the Christian expression, into the common people, this is not for everybody. It's for some people, it's for many people, it's not for everybody. So, and Rambam knew this. So he says, this is necessary. And we, as I said, we know that in the time of Rambam and in Muslim society, particularly of that time, but in general, women were not educated as a rule, or that was the rule. There were exceptions. So there has to be that aspect in Hinuch, in Torah education, that has to be present as well, even though it's not the ideal. Rambam continues. Halacha Gimel or Beth. העובד מאהבה עוסק בתורה ובמצוות והולך בנתיבות החוכמה לא מפני דבר בעולם. He who worships Hashem me'ahava, because of based on a love, a true love, and adulation, and a true desire to come closer to Hashem. העובד מאהבה עוסק בתורה, studies Torah, and lives according to the mitzvot of the Torah, והולך בנתיבות החוכמה, which I think one could define as the ways and the approach to life, and the midot of Talmidei Chachamim, which is not always mefurash in the Torah as one of the mitzvot, but the various instructions and musarim of the Torah, some of which appear in Sefer Mishneh, for example, and some of which appear in Divrei Hachamim. All of that is considered v'holech b'netibot ha'chochma. Lo mipenei davar ba'olam, not for any worldly gain or purpose. Lo mipenei yir'at hara'ah, and not because he fears what might happen if he does not do so. V'lo kedei lirash ha'tova, and not to inherit positive and desirable things, not for the reason of reward that he also knows exists, and it's necessary that we know, and that's why the Torah tells us that there is reward and there is punishment. A person who is drawn to Hashem does so because he is drawn to the truth. And the rewards and all the positive gains and aspects of one's life which will be improved, this all is a part of the deal. It's true, it's a package deal, and it should be so. But a person's motivation, if he's truly worshipping Hashem, serving Hashem, me'ahava, is in order to understand and perceive and live according to the truth. Uma'ala zo, says Rambam, halacha dalet, he ma'ala gadola ad ma'od. This is a very high level. Wa'en kol chacham zochela, and not even every chacham achieves this level. Wahi ma'alat Avraham Avinu, and this is the level, the madrega of Avraham Avinu. She'qira'o ha'kodesh baruch hu ohavi. Hashem refers to Avraham Avinu as ohavi. He who loved me, who who was consumed and completely motivated by his connection and love for me. Lefi shelo avad era mi'ahava. Abraham did so only mi'ahava, not for any other reason. وهي המעלה שציוונו בה הקדוש ברוך הוא על ידי משה רבנו. And this is what we were instructed to do and to act or to aspire to this level by HaShem, by Moshe Rabbeinu, through Moshe Rabbeinu. שנאמר, ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך, בכל נפשך, ובכל מאודך. This is exactly what we say every day in Kriyat Shema. ובזמן שיאהב את השם אהבה הראויה, מיד יעשה כל המצוות מאהבה. And if this is the level that a person achieves, then everything follows naturally. In other words, a person will be drawn to study Torah and to do the mitzvot and to shun averot, etc., because of this avat Hashem, because he wants to serve Hashem truly. Even when certain realities of which a person has to deal may cause him to lose his temper or to not be focused on such things, and this is also part of Yetzer Hara, of the Midot Haraoth, the negative aspects of a person's nefesh that we work on. We try to elevate and raise ourselves above such things and concentrate on that which is true and correct, without allowing anything else to get in the way, whether it is bakashat hasachar, wishing to receive reward or kavod or honor, or whether it is all kinds of all manner of thoughts and goings on that may cause a person to lose focus on that which is real and true and eternal. A person who focuses on Avat Hashem will find it easy to focus on that which is true and correct at all times. And Rambam there goes on to say here, now how exactly is this ahava to be understood, and how can we explain to people how they should view things and their attitude? So Rambam says, Hu she'yohav et Hashem ahava gedola yethera rabba azza ad ma'od. That's quite a serious list of words. Ahava gedola yethera rabba azza ad ma'od. In other words, a all-consuming and overwhelming love and connection to Hashem. That is the aim, and that is what we are commanded by the Torah to do. Hazal, of course, explain b'chol levavecha b'yetzer tov u'b'yetzer ra. So was Rabbi Meir Doresh in the Tosefta, the end of Masechet Berachot. It's in the Mishneh, the end of Masechet Berachot. And the meaning is that just whatever the situation and whatever the area of one's life, whatever activity one is involved in at this moment, whether it is more mundane things or more elevated, more spiritual pursuits, one has to be focused on Avodat Hashem, or doing Ratzon Hashem and coming close to Hashem, and understanding that which is true and rejecting that which is untrue. Ad sheteheh nafsho keshura ba'avat Hashem, so that a person is completely overtaken by this connection to Hashem. V'nimtza shoreh ba tamid. In other words, so that a person is constantly driven and motivated by these ideas, by such thoughts. Ke'elu holei ha'ava she'en da'atam penuya me'avat otah isha shehu shoreh ba tamid. Like there are people, shall we say, men who are completely infatuated with their love, with their connection and an infatuation with a certain woman, and therefore they're constantly thinking about this woman and nothing else. And this is how a person should think and experience this with regards to Hashem. Ben b'shochavo, ben b'kumo, at all times, whether when he's about to go to sleep or whether he's just gotten up, ben b'sha'a shehu ochel v'shoteh, when he is sitting at his meal, yafer mizeh tiyeh avat Hashem belev ohavo, more than just as a man can be consumed with his love for a woman, and this dominates all his thoughts and his actions. More than this should be the motivation and the complete connection to Hashem, a kind of infatuation with Hashem. Yater mizeti avat Hashem belev ohavo, those who truly connect with Him. Shorim ba tamid, kamo shetzivanu b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha. והוא שהשלמה אומר דרך משל, כי חולת אהבה אני. As it says in Shir HaShirim, which is a mashal, I am sick or consumed with love for you, as a man might be for a woman. כי חולת אהבה אני. וכל שיר השירים משל הוא לעניין זה. And this is precisely what Shir HaShirim is speaking about. It can be understood, Shir HaShirim can be understood, and both of these understandings are correct, both on the national level, the connection between the Kala, the woman, in other words, Klal Yisrael, and Hashem, who is the Hatan, the husband, or on the individual level, in other words, between every individual Jew and Hashem. Both of these interpretations are correct and intended by the Mashal. Amaru Hachamim, Halacha Waw Dalet, Rambam says, Amaru Hachamim Harishonim. Rambam often refers to Hazal as Hachamim Harishonim. Shema Tomar, Hareni Lamed Torah, Bishvir Sheyeh Ashir. I will study Torah in order that I become wealthy. Bishvir She'ekare Rabbi, so that I will be called Rabbi so-and-so. Bishvil she'akabel sachar l'hayeh ha'olam haba, so that I will receive reward ba'olam haba. Tilmod lomar le'ahava et Adonai. This is the pasuk that we say at the beginning of the second parasha of Kriyat Shema, right? V'hayayim shemu'at tishma'u v'tzet le'ahava את אדוני אלוהיכם, בכל לבבכם, בכל נפשכם. כל שאתם עושים, לא תעשו אלא מאהבה. All right, so we'll stop here in Hilchot Teshuvah for today. We'll return to Hilchot Talmud Torah. This we looked at these few halachot in Hilchot Teshuvah, because the Rambam said here in Hilchot Talmud Torah, "Shemitoch shelo lishma ba lishma." So we explained what lishma is, what that mindset and motivation should be. But even if a person's motivation and reasons for doing certain things associated with the Torah are not always ideal, and this is the hidush, because you may have thought otherwise, that if the person is not doing it for the ultimately correct and essential reason, then it's better that a person not do it at all. This is not true, because that would not be taking into account human nature, and we do take into account human nature. Rambam now says here, this is now in Hilchot Talmud Torah Perek Gimel, Perek Shlishi, Halacha He or Wav. Mi shenesa'o libo lekayem mitzvah zo. A person who makes up their mind, lekayem mitzvah zo kara'ui lo, to perform this mitzvah of Talmud Torah, in other words, to accept upon themselves all Torah completely, kara'ui lo, as it should be. And this already implies the person is doing so lishma. As we said at the beginning of the chapter, that there are shalosha ketharim, 3 crowns, as it were, 3 areas in which a Jew can be crowned with honor and meaning. And one of them, and the greatest of them, is the kether of Torah. If a person reaches this understanding and realization, and wishes to adopt this way of life, to be constantly involved in the study of Torah, lo yasiyah da'ato lidvarim acherim. A person therefore takes upon himself not to be distracted by all sorts of other things. V'lo yasim al libo sheyikneh Torah im ha'oshar v'hakavod ke'ehad. Nor will a person imagine and plot out their life based on the assumption that I can truly be zocher, the kinyan shel Torah, which is not the same as being kover itim la Torah. Being kover itim, in other words, setting aside time daily to study Torah is a chova, no question about it. We saw this at the very beginning of Hilchot Talmud Torah. Perek Aleph, Hilchot Talmud Torah, Halacha Yud Aleph, Halacha Heth. For example, Rambam says, "Kol ish miYisrael hayav b'Talmud Torah." Every Jew is hayav to study Torah, not just those who achieve this ideal and lofty level of Ahavat Hashem, connection to Hashem, and people who are granted by Hashem the ability to be to immerse themselves in the Torah constantly. Not only such people, every Jew is chayav to study Torah. Kol ish miYisrael chayav b'Talmud Torah. Ben ani, ben ashir, ben shalem b'chufo, ben ba'al yisurin. All manner of people. And then Rambam goes on to say in Halacha Yud Gimel Yud Yod Ad Matai Hayav Limod Torah Ad Yom Moto. A person is chayav to study Torah all his life until the day he dies, or until he's capable, physically and mentally capable of doing so. And one has to study Torah daily. Rambam goes on to say, "V'chayav l'shalish zaman l'midatho," as we saw over here previously in Perek Aleph, Halacha Yud Aleph in some books. And Rambam goes on to explain how this works. Kesav hayav ba'al u'manuth Halacha Yud Daled or Yud Bet. How a person should divide their day, and include Torah as a major part of their daily schedule. So this is the midah. This is the hava for every Jew. Here we are discussing a person who wishes to go beyond this, who is motivated to go beyond this. So here Rambam says in Perek Gimel Halacha Hey, well, Mishneh Nesa'o libo lekem mitzvah zo kara'u la. This is not the midah of your average person, something well beyond this. Such a person, such a person will shun and avoid most other matters and goings on, and will not be interested in the idle chatter and conversation of most people. The kitzur, such a person is not very good at small talk, and does not frequent cocktail parties or the golf course and the like. Nor will he imagine that one can sort of, take life easy and spend a lot of time relaxing or making money and become a serious Torah scholar. It does not work that way. It's most unusual, in fact, almost unheard of that such a thing could possibly happen. It can be that there will be a great chacham who is also very wealthy, but that's because of inherited wealth or a particular baracha, or a blessing min hashamayim that a person receives, often for that reason, to allow them to become gadol b'Torah. Excuse me. Just for example, the Ra'avad was known to be very wealthy, and what did he do with his money? We know for a fact, this is also mentioned by Binyamin Mitudela in his famous account of his travels around the various parts of the world, and particularly the Jewish world. So he relates that, and this was after the time of the Ra'avad, but it wasn't that long after the time of the Ra'avad. The Ra'avad established a yeshiva with his own money, and he from his own pocket, he supplied the needs of Talmudim who came to study under him. So this is a bracha me'at Hashem. It was not because the Ra'avad spent all his time on the stock market, but it was because he somehow had this money at his disposal, and he used it for these purposes. But a person doesn't always have such a baracha, and this is already has to do with hashkahat Hashem b'olamo. No one knows exactly how these things work, but a person has to know that whatever hand of cards, so to speak, Hashem has provided you, you have to if you, this is your intention, this is your ma'ala, this is your madriga, this is your level, this is who you are, then you have to direct yourself towards the following: to studying Torah, as we would say in Hebrew today, b'rosh gadol. In other words, to take it very seriously, not to lo lehistapek b'mu'at, not to make do with the bare minimum, but quite the opposite. To make do with the maximum, to aspire to the maximum. And in order to do so, one has to be willing to also live a more simple lifestyle. Kachu darka shel Torah. This is the way of the Torah. This is, of course, the Mishneh in Masechet Avot. Path b'melach tochel, or tochal. Be willing to eat simply, to live simply, literally bread and salt. Wa'al ha'aretz tishan, and be willing to sleep on the earth. Wahayeh sa'at tihya, and be willing to live a very Spartan lifestyle. Uvatorah ta'amil, and invest yourself completely in the Torah. V'lo alecha kol ha'melacha lichmod. You are not required, and you should not be deterred, and you should not be discouraged because you see that there's so much Torah and so much wisdom and so much understanding that I have not yet achieved. How am I ever going to achieve these things? You shouldn't think in such terms, because that will cause a person to yeush. A person will despair. A person will lose heart. That is not correct. A person has to know study of Torah, like many other things, and more than those other things, is a question of determination and application and regularity. Nor are you, because you think it's too much, I can't do this, so just give up. No. And no, avar im hilbetha Torah, hilbetha sachar. The more you study, the greater your reward. And lefum sa'ara avra, wahasachar lefi hasa'ar. And if it is not easy for you to do so, but you nevertheless invest all that you are able to invest in the Torah, your sachar, your reward, is even greater than someone who achieves these things or is able to study Torah without such effort and without such sacrifice. Well, Shema Tomar. Now, a person might say, first, I will make a lot of money. I will become wealthy, and then I will have the time and I will have the spare time. I will have the peace of mind also to study Torah. So I will first be able to purchase that which I require, and I will then be able to free myself from my business activities, and then I shall have time to study. This is mistaken. Again, this is not how the world works. Im ta'alem mahashava zo'ali b'cha, says Rambam, en ata zocher lechitra shel Torah le'olam. A person who thinks in such terms will never be zocher lechitra shel Torah, the crown of Torah. In other words, to become a serious hacham in Torah, a person of true understanding. Imbued with the wisdom of the Torah, and a person to whom people can turn and ask serious questions. and a person who can provide correct and true advice to others, as mentioned at the very beginning of the 6th additional parak of Masechet Avot. Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma, says Rabbi Meir, zocha lidvarim harbe, becomes very great in many respects, and one of those respects is being able to provide correct advice to others. And people of understanding know this. People with not on that level, but they understand that you have to turn to that kind of person to get the right advice, because that person sees the world and weighs things up in a very different way. And that is a ben Torah. A person understands this as a ben Torah, and therefore he turns to a chacham b'Torah. As I heard reported once in the name of Hagon Rabbi Aaron Kotler Zitzal, who established the yeshiva in Lakewood in America. Once, the story goes, a wealthy Jew, not a big chacham necessarily, but someone who was willing to donate a large sum of money to the yeshiva. This was in the early days of the yeshiva, so I heard the story. He asked him, well, how many students do you wish to have in this yeshiva? And he said 1,000. And he was taken aback. Why would you need 1,000 students to produce a few great rabbanim? You need 1,000 students? And he says, no. To create a few chachmei Torah, you don't need 1,000 students. You can handpick a few. But what I'm aiming at is to have one gadol b'Torah and 999 mevinim. 999 people who know the value of the gadol b'Torah, and mimela know that you should actually ask him questions and turn to him and seek his advice. That's a mivin. But that also requires education. That also requires training and living with people who understand the world in those terms. So, to be a mevin or to be a good Jew who supports his family and lives like more or less like other people, and is kove'itim la Torah, that is one thing. And such a person also requires havana. He has to have understanding and be a ben Torah. But to be zochel lechitra shel Torah, which is what we're discussing here, and that's what the Mishneh in Masechet Avot is discussing, that is something else. That's what Rambam is discussing here. Im ta'alem mahashava zo ali bircha ena ta zochel lechitra shel Torah le'olam. Ena aset toratecha keva. Again, another Mishnah, Masechet Avot. Shammai says this. And do not think that you will study Torah when you have time, because you will discover that you will never have time. There will always be other things to distract you and which will consume your time. So this whole perek, up to this point that we have studied today, has been discussing Misha Roseli's Kof B'chitra Shel Torah, a person who wishes to assume upon themselves the task and the destiny of being a chacham b'Torah in the real sense. That is a lifelong undertaking, and that is an extremely serious undertaking, and that requires a particular mindset and an attitude and lifestyle often as well. We shall stop here for today. היו ברוכים, השם יהיה בעזרכם. חזקו ויאמץ לבבכם כל המייחלים לאדוני.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.